The Objective. To deliver the NBA to you like no other. News. Play breakdowns. Power rankings. Storylines you never hear talked about anywhere else. It's all straight shots here, fired by straight shooters. S and Gun. This is the Objective Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Objective Basketball Podcast. S here, Lauren joining me as always. Folks, it is a late one. All right, 10:07. We just finished up the Raptors Heat game and the Cavaliers Hawks game that went down to the wire. The Hawks end up staying in eighth place, which was an all-important. It was an all-important night for the Eastern Conference play-in race, depending on how important that is to you. But for the people who might be listening, it might be important to them. The Raptors end up staying in ninth. They pulled out a really, really good victory against the Miami Heat. Scotty Barnes had a sensational game, 12 dimes, nearly had a triple-double. Pascal Siakam, being his old Pascal Siakam self. OG Anunoby doing great things. The Raptors played really, really well. But the Hawks end up staying in 8th place. There's still a week and a little bit left in the season, though. And Lauren, with a week and a little bit left in the season, you would expect to have some great games. We've had some great games, but yesterday was supposed to be one of the best games of the season, and we did not get that. Denver Nuggets versus the Philadelphia 76ers, Nikola Jokic versus Joel Embiid. Embiid dropped the bomb on Jokic not right before the game, but at least the day of the game. Had a unplugged interview with Shams Charania, talking about the MVP award, talking about how he doesn't mind being the bad guy. I'm cool being the bad guy. I kind of like that. I love that about Joel Embiid, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is, he didn't end up playing in the game. Cavs, I believe it was his calf injury. I believe it was a calf injury, or he was resting because of a lingering calf issue. Some people, you've seen it online, Kendrick Perkins saying he ducked the smoke, right? Others have jumped in and said the same thing. What are your sentiments on the topic of Joel Embiid, his quotes, the MVP saga, all of it? How do you feel about any of it?
Yeah, I think I think it's hilarious that you have somebody saying, I don't mind being the bad guy. The villain. You've got even the mask at some points. You've got all these things. And then now there's kind of this, there are plenty of people out there that are saying, well, you just ducked that matchup. So how bad of a guy you can't really be the bad guy if you're out here ducking matchups. And right. I don't necessarily jump on the whole, you're ducking matchups, especially for the MVP kind of battle. That game and that matchup going head to head, especially right before playoffs, it would have been a big, big deal, especially in this whole MVP conversation. But when I kind of take a step back, there are things when I'm watching from a fan perspective, I also try to keep in mind, okay, if you're the franchise or the team doctors or the coach or whoever, what is going through your mind right now? You are aware of the MVP conversation, but that's not your priority. Your priority is what's right around the corner and taking it the whole way. And so it's hard for me to sit and ever really think about somebody ducking a matchup. My brain doesn't work that way, but it's a shame. It's a shame.
To your point, and you're right. You're 100% right. But to your point about anybody even fathoming the idea of ducking a matchup, just consider who the type of people you're talking about here. These are professional athletes. These are people that have genuinely thrived on competition for their entire life. That is what sports is, ladies and gentlemen. It's go and show up that guy in the high school gym. Show him that you're the guy, you're the team captain, etc. Okay, now you're in college. Now you got to compete against these grown men. And oh, by the way, you're supposed to be a lottery pick, so everybody's going to be, kind of gearing their stuff up towards you. Oh, welcome to the NBA now, where you are genuinely among men, and hey, you have to keep that competitive edge. This whole thing, professional sports, is a competitive thing. I highly doubt that Joel Embiid, a man who has obviously become an MVP caliber player in his prime, would decide, hey, you know what, man? I'm not feeling
I'm
this
good.
one today.
Yeah.
I highly doubt, after all of the things that Joel Embiid and many other professional athletes, by the way, have gone through, I doubt that they would just randomly decide, hey, I'm not feeling this one, or I'm not up to the challenge. I'm not up to playing in Denver against Jokic and the altitude and all that stuff. I think that is crazy talk. That's like you're not understanding the sport, or you're not even understanding what sports are.
Right. And I'm glad that you mentioned like the competitiveness of professional athletes, but even in that group of people, in that general population of professional athletes, we're talking about Joel Embiid and his personality. He is not the guy that's going to duck a matchup. I mean, I can't even really ever envision him being like, oh yeah, he got me, that guy got me, or oh, I got postered. I can see him being like, oh well, it was my bad, or like I was distracted, or like I can't ever see him like giving anything up. You know what I mean? And so that is just complete, that logic with him ducking a match. It just doesn't settle right in my brain.
I think it's an overall, and I've said this to a couple people that I had a conversation with earlier. I think it's just an overall dislike for Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. I think it's just they've become the butt of the joke when it comes to the playoffs, when it comes to the playoff success or lack thereof playoff success. Add on James Harden and Daryl Morey into that, and it's like 2 times the trouble, because what does everybody say about Joel Embiid and James Harden and Daryl Morey is that, hey, they've gotten to this point, but they've never gotten over the hump. And I just think it's created this scenario where everybody wants to pit against Embiid. And I think, his quote about him saying, I don't mind being the bad guy, is probably the right approach to have, because for a lot of people, for some reason, he has become the bad guy. He has become the quote unquote villain. Although I think it would be awesome for Embiid to end up winning a championship or even an MVP this season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think we both would agree that they're very much, he's very much obviously in the running for the MVP, but also to win it all with the way that they're playing right now. But yeah, no, I agree. I think them kind of, and not just Joel Embiid, but the 76ers as a whole, I think kind of embodying and embracing this quote unquote villain mentality is the right approach too. I think that they should and that they are going into the playoffs, no fear, ready to go toe to toe with anyone and feeling confident about each matchup and one by one, just taking everybody out. I think that they do feel that they're capable of it. I think they've given people reasons to believe that they are capable and are going to do it. And I'm really curious to see how that works out for them, because we've talked about it on here. And if it doesn't go that way, the conversation flips real quick. And so Philadelphia, kind of going back to our pressure cooker, or when we were talking about them being in a pressure cooker, I'm curious to see how that looks, if they really can live up to being the bad guy, the villain, just being kind of one of the main characters in this story of the NBA postseason.
The NBA postseason. It's going to be crazy. I honestly, I can't even think this season went by so fast. It went by so quickly.
Oof, it did.
I don't know what it was, but it just felt like this season was a breeze. Maybe it was because of the fact that we've had a bunch of good games, good competition, and especially towards the next, week and a half, it's still close. The NBA communications team kind of dropped this earlier, but this is the most amount of teams at this point in the season that have been eligible for the playoffs still. I believe there's only 5 teams or 4 teams that have been eliminated out of playoff contention. The rest of them have a shot.
It's crazy.
Which is wild. Look, you have a shot, you have a bet, you have a gamble. Let's segue, ladies and gentlemen. It's March Mania at Sports Interaction, the NHL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, and of course, March Madness. So much going on, so much to talk about. It's bananas. Play Pinata Picks and Minute Madness. Exclusive games you can't play anywhere else. Use the QR code on your screen. Download it. Do all that fun stuff. Or visit sdpn.com or sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. Actually, use the second one. That's correct. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. That is also sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. I am starting to kill these ad reads, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So, The Embiid conversation is moving on. Next thing, because we have a lot of Embiid coming, to be honest with you. Between the MVP talk, we'll probably do an awards episode maybe later this week. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see what happens. But there's another side story here, the opposite of the playoffs, which is teams that are going the opposite way. And that's the Portland Trailblazers. Damian Lillard has officially been shut down for the season. He arguably had the best season of his career. I would say 100% he's had the best. I mean, there's debates because, honestly, he's had some incredible seasons. But just to go off the counting stats, he's played 58 games this season. He's averaging 32.2 points on 46, 37, 91 shooting, dishing out 7.5 assists. It's been incredible to watch him offensively. It's really been one of his best seasons of his career. And I guess the conversation with Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers always comes back to one thing. And it's, hey, when does the road end here? When do we end up getting to the point where, quote unquote, serious conversations will be had? And I know that, report came out recently saying that serious conversations will be had this summer. I guess my thing is I kind of got to see it to believe it at this point with Dame and with the Blazers and what they decide to do. I don't mind either way. I'm not one of those people that is like, hey, you have to switch teams, bro. I don't think that at all. Like, whatever your prerogative is, do your thing, But I guess it's just interesting to me because he is still very good at basketball. That is very clear. He can contribute at a high level to any type of team, a championship team, whatever, right? But this Portland team just hasn't been able to materialize into anything past a mid-tier playoff team. They obviously had that Western Conference Finals run, but they really haven't been able to create any of that magic since. And I'm not sure. I think if I were the Portland Trailblazers and I'm taking emotions and, hey, this is the greatest player in franchise history out of it, I think I would say to myself that this is time to move on from Damian Lillard. I'm not going to say it's a toxic relationship because it's not a toxic relationship. It's actually amicable, but you're kind of like doing like, if you love a bird, you let it fly, Yeah.
You
remember
when you love someone, you got to let them go.
Yeah. Isn't that's the Notebook, right? That's the Notebook.
Oh, maybe. Shoot. I don't know. It's been a minute.
But yes. So look, I think that's the stages we're reaching with the Blazers and Dame. Mm-hmm. Do you agree? Do you think that ends up happening at some point, or are we just going through the same cycle over and over again?
Yeah, it's difficult with Dame because we're in this kind of, I don't even want to say in between. It feels like we've exited the era where people stay on teams for their entire careers, and we still have guys like Dame, obviously guys like Giannis, even and even Jokic, especially if they have some real success here. But with Dame specifically, it's hard to compare him to other guys around the league that have just jumped ship. And it does feel, because of the recent history and especially with how quickly these big high profile players can jump teams, it does feel inevitable. But I am sort of curious if we're going to have someone, whether it be a Bradley Beal or even some of the other guys I just mentioned, if we're going to see someone truly just stick it out and say, you know what, my priority is not, and I recognize that it's going to sound crazy, but my priority is to stay here, build and keep working with this team, keep my loyalty, build this community.
And that's fine.
It's fine. And going back to what you said, everybody has their prerogative. And I think it's important to have conversations that validate each prerogative. Just because you don't jump ship to go join a big market team to easily win a championship doesn't mean that your legacy was, quote unquote, trash or a waste. I think that narrative is one that is toxic, and really truly only promotes the success. Not, this may be a leap, but primarily promotes the success of the high market teams and then leaves the lower and middle market teams kind of hanging in the wind, hoping for a good luck year every once in a while. And I personally don't think that that's good for the league. So with Dame specifically, I am curious to see where things go. I think his not necessarily super recent comments, but the comments we've heard over the last kind of couple weeks, even couple of months, lead you to believe that maybe those serious conversations from both sides could be coming, which is why I think the door is open for this summer to be the one.
Yeah.
I was curious to see at this last trade deadline how aggressive they were with Jeremy Grant, even a hard decision with an Anthony Simons or even like a younger Shaden Sharp. Are you even remotely willing to move off of these really, really intriguing, highly coveted young pieces to try and go all in? And we just didn't see that happen. We did not see that happen. In fact, the trades that they did do, you know what I mean?
I wonder if they have. I mean, I know maybe I'm being crazy here, but maybe they have a better chance at doing that right now. And to the people who are, I guess, disappointed in the Blazers shutting down Dame and going towards that tanking thing, I would say this: the Blazers, they've struggled all season. They do not look like a playoff team. They don't look like even a play-in team right now. They have completely tanked out. They've decided they are not winning. They've lost 9 of their last 10 games. This isn't a team that Damian Lillard can save. And and on top of that, you're in a position where, okay, your roster is probably a little bit better than what it is right now. You have young guys who you hope can develop into something bigger in Simons, in Sharp, in some of the other guys. Walker, I like to.
Yeah.
You have some potential there. And also, now you have the potential of getting a top 5 pick in a potentially all-time level NBA draft.
Yes.
You can package that potentially and go out and compete with Dame. Although I don't know what's going to be out there this summer, depending on what players end up moving. There's always something, right?
There's always something. And I'm glad you brought up the draft, because they right now are slotted at the 5th pick, but they have almost the same record as the Wizards, who picked up a win tonight, the Pacers, and the Magic, who are right below them. So shutting down Dame right now, for those who might be disappointed in it, that is the right decision. You need having the 5th pick versus the 8th pick. There's a difference there. And for Portland, trying to, even in the short and long term, this is the right move. And this is what's going to significantly open doors if you can get that 5th pick.
Like what happens if the Blazers end up getting Wemby?
Exactly. If you're 5th, it is very easy to jump up to 3 or 2 or even 1. We've seen crazier things happen before. So I stand by this decision to shut Dame down for the rest of the season 1,000%.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to guys who are coming back or have been back. Okay, Kevin Durant officially going to give it a go tomorrow. If you're listening to this, that means today, against the Minnesota Timberwolves. KD played all of 3 games in a Suns uniform and then ended up getting hurt with just like an out of the blue random warm-up ankle injury. Hurt it during warm-ups, which is just unfortunate. One of those silly injuries. It feels like even the knee injury that kept him out for a while was not his fault whatsoever. Someone landed on his freaking knee. And it's tough because it's like, hey, people are going to go back and be like, oh, Kevin Durant was so injury prone. And I guess to a certain extent he was, yes. But at the same time, the man has had unbelievably bad luck when it comes to injuries. But he's back now, ladies and gentlemen, and the Suns have to galvanize very quickly. I personally think Durant will be able to galvanize and kind of mesh in the Sun system super quickly. He already did in the 3 games that he was there. The Suns themselves, they have a playoff race that they're trying to be a part of. They're 40-35 right now. I highly doubt they're going to end up being a top 2 or top 3 seed. They are trying to fight for 4, which is home court advantage and potentially a second round series against the Denver Nuggets, or if whoever ends up beating the Nuggets in the first round. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, they're essentially gearing up to be in a pretty comfortable position going into the playoffs. We've talked about it before on this podcast, but I personally like Phoenix in a Denver series because of the type of things that they can throw out on a Denver playoff series, if you will. The mid-range jump shooting is something that's going to be key and something that can burn the Nuggets. I guess my question is, is there any worries for you when it comes to Kevin Durant or Phoenix? And I mean, are you looking for anything in these next 6 or 7 games? I don't know how many games they have left, but like, are you looking for anything specific with KD?
Oh man, I don't know that I'm looking for anything specific. I guess I want to see him I want to see the kind of seamless transition of getting back into the lineup and seeing how maybe and I obviously they're not going to be throwing out their exact playoff rotation, their exact playoff scheme, but I want to see if they make any tweaks to the rotation or even try a couple of experimental things in certain lineups that do include Kevin Durant and see how that looks. Because I think that they do have options. And so I'm curious to see what they do. I'm with you. I like their odds against a lot of teams in the Western Conference, and getting that fourth seed, securing home court advantage in that first round, and then kind of looking at your path ahead. Obviously, it's one series at a time, but I like that a lot if I'm Phoenix. And so bringing Kevin Durant back, for anyone that might have concerns, especially when we're talking about the misfortune and the unluckiness with the injuries, I don't necessarily think it's a super risky thing. I think there are ways to kind of mitigate the risks there with obviously certain scenarios, minute restrictions, all those things. And so I like the decision. I think it's important for him to get back and for them to secure that fourth seed, because home court advantage, we've seen the impact that it can have. And so in a very tough West, I think it's key to have that for sure.
Let me pose this question to you.
Let's do it.
If you are the Suns, the Clippers, the Warriors, and now the Minnesota Timberwolves, by the way, we'll talk about them in a sec. But if you're those four teams, what is the seed that you like the most?
That's a good question. Oh man, that is a good question.
I have an answer, but I feel like it seems obvious to me. I'll let you decide though.
You said Suns, Clippers, Wolves. What team out of those teams?
And I guess and the Warriors, I guess.
And the Warriors as well.
Yeah. I guess my question is, hey, would you rather be on one side of the bracket with Denver, potentially one of the teams that we just mentioned, and then that, or would you rather be with Sacramento, Memphis?
God,
Memphis is tough. Good, by the way.
That's tough because both have that's tough. Personally, I mean, and this is the reason it's so tough is because each team I think has favorable matchups against different teams.
For sure.
But personally, I would probably rather be. Oh, I'm gonna get some heat for this. I would rather be on the Memphis side.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think I would too. I
don't want to count them out, and I'm not counting them out, but I have questions. I just have questions. That's all.
No, I think the questions are completely fair. I mean, if we talk about playoff experience, the Sacramento Kings and Memphis Grizzlies do not have a ton of playoff experience. If you look on the other side of that, the Suns, the Clippers, the Warriors all have ample amounts of playoff experience. The Wolves are a different story. They're
the Wolves. If I'm the Wolves, I might have a different answer for you.
Yeah. But I think it's at least something that I like. I have seen the Clippers lose games specifically in order to tank their position. We remember the Oklahoma City game. I believe it was last season or the season before that. They ended up losing on the final day to OKC. And I believe that actually ended up screwing up OKC's lottery odds or pick odds or something too. But they ended up losing that game in order to drop and then not face the Lakers. I think it was something along those lines.
I think they wanted the Mavericks because they felt confident against the Mavericks.
Right, they wanted the Mavericks, and Luka almost made them regret that.
Yes, he
did. I guess my thing is we've seen it before. We've seen teams purposefully lose, and if I'm the Suns, I don't think I want to do that. I think I'm comfortable being like, hey, I have one of the best teams in the league. I'll take home court advantage as far as I can. But if you're the Clippers, who are missing Paul George for probably the first round, if you're the Warriors, who are still waiting on a to-be-decided Andrew Wiggins. By the way, Andrew Wiggins, apparently Steve Kerr gave us an update saying he's been working out at home, so maybe he does end up coming back. But if I'm those teams that are kind of waiting and lingering and trying to see who ends up coming back and if I can get healthy, I feel like I like myself in a Memphis or a Sacramento series versus a Phoenix series.
Definitely. I think so, especially if you're the Clippers or the Warriors specifically, because Jesus, I mean, with the injuries, but also the leadership, or excuse me, the experience, I think those two things right there are huge, are big enough to lead you to try and prioritize that. So I'm with you there. I'm going to be interested to see how that shakes out, because for so long it's been like, you need to win, you need to make sure you're out of the play-in, you need to secure your spot no matter who you are at what tier. And now it's like, well, there's only a few left. So should we kind of, I'll be interested. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. We'll see what KD looks like tomorrow. That's going to be a great game. Kings also have a chance to clinch tomorrow as well, so we'll see. Although there might be a chance they clinch tonight. I think I saw that, but no. Anyways, Kings are going to be clinching their first playoff berth in 16 seasons. Either when you're listening to this or the day that you're listening to this. But wanted to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, which are the team the Phoenix Suns will be playing. They've won 4 in a row. Karl-Anthony Towns has been back. He looks pretty good. It actually looks better now with Gobert. They've been using these really, really big lineups. Naz Reid sometimes plays with those two. They'll throw Kyle Anderson in there. They obviously have Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards. So they have a lot of size across the board, and it's looked really, really good. The Mike Conley addition has been smooth. I think Mike Conley he is who he is at this point. He's going to be able to give you what he gives you. And they look good. They're 6th in the West now, and they have a chance. I mentioned them earlier, but they have a chance to potentially climb up to 4, depending on how hot they can get. Now, if you look back at that Timberwolves season, this is the interesting part about this. Remember when we were doom and gloom on the Minnesota Timberwolves? We're like, man, what's going to happen? Maybe they have to address Karl-Anthony Towns getting moved. Oh, my God, this Gobert experiment doesn't work. And now, all of a sudden, they have a chance at being a 4 seed.
It's crazy. Yeah. It is crazy. And I didn't, not to interrupt you, just real quick. It's crazy because we're talking about them getting hot and getting up to the 4th seed, but they could just as easily slip a couple and then, be out or first round. Like, it's crazy the state of the West right now, which is why I think the conversation we had about the pressure cooker environment that some of these teams are facing is going to be such a big factor in each individual playoff series, which I think also circles back to the conversation about kind of selecting your matchup if you can, going up against teams that don't have experience. I think that all those factors are going to be huge, especially this year specifically.
I mentioned the Phoenix game, which is happening tonight, but they're also playing the Lakers on Friday, and then they end up 3 easy games. They have Portland, Brooklyn, and San Antonio, and then the final game of the season against New Orleans. So they're essentially playing 3 teams that they're jockeying with for positioning in the standings. And I think these next 2 games will probably determine where they end up landing. They win these next 2 games. Okay, there's maybe a shot they end up 4th or 5th. They lose or they split it, and you're looking at 6, 7, 8. And yes, it is that is going to determine this. You just mentioned how close the Western Conference is. It will be a matter of 2 games. I think the Hornets ended up losing tonight to the Thunder, right? Yeah. Just to confirm. Yeah, the Hornets ended up losing tonight to the Thunder. And
no, they won. They won by 3.
Sorry, the Hornets end up winning. My fault.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm skipping on my words here. Yes, the Hornets ended up winning by 3. And now your Mavericks have a chance. They're back in it. They're back in it, ladies and gentlemen. They're back. Welcome back, Kyrie.
Don't say it.
I'm just saying it's a wide open race. This thing is going to change every day. By the time you're probably listening to this, if you're listening to this on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday or a Friday instead of a Wednesday, this has already changed. So I think it's insane. The Wolves have played great. I really love the way that they've built that team, and I still believe. I know we were all doom and gloom, but I had my preseason predictions, and let's see if they live it out. I would love for that to happen. I would love for that to happen. LeBron also came back. And the Lakers didn't look as great. They lost to the Chicago Bulls. They play them again tomorrow night or tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. Wow, we really got to figure that out. But, I mean, overall, LeBron was all right. He scored 19. I think he got to his offense. I mean, LeBron is going to do what LeBron does. But in terms of how early he came back, I was pretty surprised. The LeBron James of feet. Did you see that?
I did see that. I have a lot of concerns about that. And I'm not to discredit or discount the LeBron of feet, but getting multiple opinions and the majority of them are not good. And then all of a sudden, bam, we have this miracle fix. I have concerns about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and he did look like he was shaken off the rust in that Chicago game. So I don't know. I think the Lakers are positioned definitely to be a playing team. They look the part of it. I have a video coming out about Austin Reeves. It's probably out by the time you listen to this, actually, ladies and gentlemen. But they look like they're in a good spot. Look, obviously they're playing Chicago and then Minnesota, and then the schedule gets a little bit easier for them. You got the Rockets, the Jazz, the Clippers, the Suns, and then the Jazz again, that's actually that tail end right there is really tough. But depending on what Utah is doing at that point, maybe they end up bowing out like the Trailblazers did. So very interesting to see what happens with the Western Conference. We're going to be talking about that pretty much until the last day of the season. I want to talk about your Mavericks a little bit before we head out. How you feeling? How is the, you guys obviously beat the Pacers. I believe the Tyrese Halliburton list Pacers. The Raptors couldn't even do that, so don't worry about that. How do you feel? How is the confidence a little bit higher now that you have moved past the 2 losses to Charlotte?
No,
it's
not. I'm exhausted with this team. God, as we were talking about Charlotte and OKC, I refreshed Tankathon because I keep it up at all times. And they now hold the 12th pick, which obviously goes to New York. And I am just I'm not having it. I'm not having it because as much as maybe from the outside, as much as people outside may say the Mavericks cannot afford to miss the playoffs, do you have any idea how bad that would be for Luka? I get that. I totally get that. But let's just keep it real. They're not doing anything in the playoffs. They're not. And I have tried to be optimistic with, Kyrie and Luka, like they work together. They like each other, which yes, they like each other despite what that narrative that was put out there. They like each other. Yeah. They can't do it. They can't even rebound the basketball. And so I am over this season. They need to focus on the draft. They need to keep that draft pick because that is their one option. I have been going on Twitter, going crazy about it. If anybody hasn't seen it,
definitely is a good option. Yeah.
You need to keep that draft pick because it completely opens things up for you. They're not going to have Christian Wood next year. That would really floor me. And they might not even have Kyrie Irving. And so knowing that is potentially in front of you, and here you are fighting with the Utah Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder to get into the play-in is awful. That's awful. So in what world are you seriously considering trying to win as many games as you can in this final stretch when you could have potentially a top 10 pick in, like you mentioned earlier, potentially one of the greatest drafts in history? What are you doing? That's crazy. But at the same time, that is what we've seen year in and year out with the Mavericks. So
I would be pretty surprised if they end up bowing out and they're like, we'll try again next year. Okay,
I would too. I was secretly hoping for that Pacer. Not secretly. I was loudly hoping for the Pacers. I was like, second night of a back-to-back, like Miles Turner is going to go off for like 20 and 20. And then they sit both Miles and Tyrese. And I'm like, son of no. And then they win. And so now here we are. OKC loses. And so
you're back in it. We're back in it.
We're back in it. And I know that they're probably over there thinking that, hey, we're in it. We have just as good of a shot as anybody. We're right there with the Lakers who think that they can contend for a championship. Why can't we? I know that that's what's going on. And I just,
also, it's funny you mentioned that with the Timberwolves, but I'll mention it back. Look, that they are a couple game winning streak away from being like 6th or 7th,
oh God, don't.
I'm just,
it's
I'm
true.
Just saying,
it's true.
It's a point,
true.
To be fair, their schedule is not the easiest.
Tough.
They have Philly, at Miami, at Atlanta, and then versus Sacramento, versus Chicago, versus San Antonio. So it's not the easiest of schedules. And look, they lost twice to the Hornets. So who really knows what kind
everybody's
of
on the table.
Right. What kind of Mavericks team is going to be showing up on any given night. But to your point about tanking, I think the fact that Luka and Kyrie haven't been 100% over this last stretch as well kind of plays a factor to that. It's like, look, if your guys are hurt, why not just kind of get them to be at 100 and then, you get a an extra lottery pick out of that potentially top 10,
Right.
lottery pick out of it. So I agree from that point. And then if you look at it similar to the Blazers situation, honestly, is like, hey, now you have Jaden Hardy and Josh Green and an extra lottery pick. And, maybe we can package that and add to Kyrie and Luka. And, maybe
2 picks, 2 swaps. Oh, my God.
Right, yeah.
Would you look at that?
Maybe now you're a DeAndre Ayton, or something like, I don't know.
Just anything, honestly, anything that is secure and that's solid, because they don't have that right now, which is what's blowing my mind, because getting a lottery pick, even just a lottery pick, and granted, it would have to be top 10 for them to keep it, for those who are not clear about the pick protection details there. If they can keep a top 10 pick, it is a future investment. It is a current investment. It changes things so much. And so on one hand, I'm like, okay, they've got a tough stretch of games here, which is why, and I tweeted this out, I expected them to win against the Pacers just because nothing ever goes my way. And I knew that they were going to win. But then I was like, okay, these games against Sacramento and Philly, the ones that you mentioned, they're going up against tough teams. So they could very easily, and probably most likely will drop those, especially since they're on the road. And then you've got Chicago, which is who they're right there with, Chicago, and you've got San Antonio at the end of all of this. And granted, obviously, we know everyone knows what San Antonio is doing, but those 2 games, Chicago specifically, you can lose that one. You can afford to lose that one. And for the Mavs people here listening, this is all feeling very, what is it? Salah Mejri, when he single-handedly won the game that broke the tiebreaker with Memphis and New Orleans, that ended up getting them Ja Morant and Zion Williamson. And where were we? Where were we, S? Where were we? Oh my God, it's all gonna happen again, and I'm losing it.
Have arrived at Salah Mejri hours, ladies and gentlemen.
You can have Malachi Flynn, I get Salah Mejri.
We've arrived. My God, I did not know that was gonna get a mention on the podcast. That's crazy.
Surprise.
Wow, wonderful. To your point about the Mavericks, I mean, like, look, you have a point. I just don't think they're gonna do it. I don't
think they will either. I really don't.
They just no way. And like Luka, what is he gonna sign up for? Like, is he down for that? Would he be willing to tank out the season? I'm not sure. Question marks. ... All of the above. Want to end off on a funner topic. More fun. Jesus. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame. This is just a quick thing. Adrian Wojnarowski reported it. Dwayne Wade, Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, Becky Hammon, Greg Popovich. Those are the finals. They're going to be inducted, elected, whatever you want to call it, into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame class of 2023. Can't think of a more stacked Hall of Fame class. That is an insanely stacked Hall of Fame class. As a person who grew up watching 2000s basketball, watching these guys dominate, it's funny because Greg Popovich is still coaching, and he is about to be a Hall of Famer, which is just crazy to think about. I mean, honestly, what more is there left to say? All those people are incredibly accomplished. They are like the creme de la creme of people that I think about when I think of like my early basketball days. Dwayne Wade, obviously probably not a fan favorite of yours.
Not quite.
But he was a great. I love Dwayne Wade. I also love Dirk Nowitzki though, and Dirk is going to be in the Hall of Fame, which is probably great for you. They had the statue this season, which was super dope to see. Pau Gasol, I mean, the Lakers championships, the back-to-back, the connection with Kobe, and then his own career, especially with his national career as well with his time in Memphis. So I think that's amazing. Tony Parker, another guy. I mean, like, the list is incredible. Anything to say on Hall of Fame stuff before we head out?
It's always exciting. It is a loaded class, and I'm glad you mentioned like the 2000s, like basketball and that era that we grew up on, because it really is like it's very fresh in my brain. The NBA Live 2006 era. It's
with,
all
with Wade on the cover, by the way. Just
I know. Gag. Anyway, but 2000s basketball, different era, and so I love it. I can't wait to celebrate it, and I am fully expecting the Mavs to change the narrative to we are here to celebrate Dirk instead of focusing on what's happening,
happening
right here in front of you. That is what I'm anticipating.
Man. That's funny. It's a good year for the Spurs too, obviously with Tony Parker and Greg Popovich. I think one of my first ever like NBA guys I tried to like replicate as much on the court was Tony Parker, because I had a French class, and in Canada we do French, ladies and gentlemen. For the American people listening, for the American people, you guys would do Spanish in these classes, so it's the same thing. Anyways, continuing forward with my educational lesson, with Tony Parker, I had to do a project. They're like, hey, pick any French person and do a project on them. And I remember in grade 6, I got up, or maybe whenever we started French, I got up and I'm doing this performance. I'm rapping his songs. If you guys don't know,
my God,
Tony Parker was a rapper. He dropped an album, French album, and I ended up performing one of his songs. And amazing. It was. I love Tony P. I love Tony P because of it. I love Tony P. So yeah, I mean, even though have you heard of the bottle scenario? He was throwing bottles, got the cut on the lacerations.
No. Oh wait. This is ringing a bell. This is ringing a bit of a bell. Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting basketball career, Tony Parker. A lot of these people have incredible coaching and playing careers. I mean, it goes without saying. And, you know, me and Lauren over here gushing over early 2000s basketball, to think about how much basketball has changed that amount of time in our lifetime. You know, I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And now I'm 10 years older than that, 15 years older than that. And the game has changed incredibly. It's like, it's night and day. You can't compare the Phoenix Suns basketball that we saw in 05, 06 and 06, 07, or the Spurs basketball that we saw back then, or even the Mavericks basketball that we saw back then, to what we see today. It's like, it's completely different. And I mean, I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like in 20 years, because I mean,
it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. I'm going to feel old, but whatever, we'll go for it. We'll see what happens. Folks, thank you very much for listening to the Objective Basketball Podcast. From Lauren and I, we appreciate you guys. Do the liking, the subscribing, the rating, and on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. We got a lot of good content coming to you throughout the end of this regular season. Award predictions, more videos, cool playoff breakdowns, the whole 9 yards, folks. It is NBA bonanza right now between the playoffs and everything else that's going to be coming. So we got you covered at the Objective Basketball Podcast. We will talk to you guys later. Lauren, adios.
Follow hosts at Just S. Barahini on all socials and at The Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA to you like no other.